A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. After he had fed the people, Jesus made the disciples get into a boat, proceed him to the other side while he dismissed the crowds. And after doing so, he went up to the mountain by himself to pray, and it was evening, and he was there alone. Meanwhile, the boat, already a few miles offshore, was being tossed about by waves, for the wind was against it. During the fourth watch of the night, he came toward them walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and they cried out in fear. Once Jesus spoke to them, "Take courage, it is I, do not be afraid." And Peter said to him in reply, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." And he said, "Well, come." So Peter got out of the boat and began to walk on the water toward Jesus, and when he saw how strong the wind was, he became frightened, and beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately Jesus stretched out his hand and caught Peter and said to him, "O you of little faith, why did you doubt?" And after they got into the boat and the wind died down, those who were in the boat did him homage, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." The Gospel of the Lord. Take courage, it's I. Don't be dominated by fear, but open to where the relationship may go. No need to act surprised. I've seen it in your eyes. I feel it when you lie here worlds apart. It's easier to stay, it's easier to say, there's going to come a day when it won't be so hard. Well, those are the opening lyrics to a song dropped a couple weeks ago by the Morgan Whalen. It's called "Been By Now." It goes on to say, "I know you want to think that it's what we found, but if it was meant to be, we'd have been by now." Been by now. So it's a breakup song, although I would say it's got a unique spin to it. It's sort of a pre-breakup song. And Whalen's basically saying, if things would have been what they ought to be, then they would have been by now. A little play off of the verb to be, huh? And in some ways, we may have all had some experience, whether it's with a romantic relationship or with a friendship, where we think, geez, if this were going to be something more, it should have been by now. And there could be a lot of reasons why we might have that kind of a doubt about the future of the relationship. But I do think there's a way in which most of our relationships, if there's any love there, any kind of love, there's always a possibility to be something more or something not as much as we thought. Now, that's all something dependent upon our own expectations. Because love is love, and love will always sustain us as a gift of God. Remember, love is not something we generate on our own. It's a theological virtue. It's given to us as a gift. We either accept it or we don't. And so I think there's a way in which today's gospel teaches us a little bit about the way in which you and I might need to not let our own expectations set limits on what is possible in relationships. And let those expectations adjust so that you and I can come to a point where we come to know what love is just offering us. Simply and pure, and let it be. Let love be. In the gospel today, of course, Jesus has just fed the 5,000. He has told them, don't dismiss these people. Don't just write them off. Don't come to a simplistic answer. Lean in to what is the problem. Don't have a scarcity mentality, and instead, he has asked them to feed the 5,000. They've done this. They've all of a sudden acknowledged in themselves something more than they probably understood for themselves, that they have more resources, more creativity, more faith than they thought. Well, here they are kind of going off by themselves to get a little break, and of course, the storm comes along, and Jesus comes at them in the midst of the storm, responding to them in their need out of his commitment to them, his relationship to them, and they're, of course, terrified. They don't know who he is, of course. Peter, typical of Peter, sort of jumps in, leans into it in a way, but then halfway through, he doubts. I think there's a way in which Peter has a been by now moment as he's walking toward Jesus and thinks, well, it's not here, or I'm not going to realize what I had hoped, and boom, he collapses. And however, even in his crisis, he still cries out, like, now I can't do this on my own. Well, you can't. We do it with God, by God's power. We can do our human relationships, though, by our power, infused by grace from God. And I think Peter just doesn't get the whole package. So Jesus, of course, lifts him out and then says, have some faith, man. The faith that Peter may not have in this gospel, most of it may be about faith in himself, small f. There's a way in which Peter jumps in with this great instinct and then, boom, doubts himself, thinks it's not going to happen or it should have happened or whatever, and it's over. And then they sit down and realize, okay, this Jesus is the Son of God. He is who he says he is. He is for us someone, something. We're still not completely clear on exactly what that is, but it's amazing. It's a relationship. It's a commitment. He's not going to let us go. He's not going to walk away. He's always going to be faithful. So let's take that for what it is today and now. In our own relationships, we may struggle with that. So many times we can turn on our news feed and we can just see relationships that are so transactional. We can see people who have messed up their entire lives and made complete crap of all of their relationships because they've treated them as quid pro quo. How do I use you and how do I use me? Even in their own families. We can see that among some of our leaders. And it's really sad. It's pathetic. If we look at our relationships as simply transactional, as what are we going to get from each other, well, then it's just some kind of it's contractual. It's limited. But if we can look at our relationship, the things that Jesus is trying to teach us here is we're going to be with each other and we're going to journey with each other in one form or another. It may not be like Morgan Wallen's new song. It may not be what we thought it would be. And that maybe expectation should have been realized by now. Been by now? Okay, maybe not. But there's something there, and I would suggest, you can go on and look at the song yourself, I would suggest that there's no relationship we really should walk away from. Now, if we've had a pretty intense romantic relationship and it broke a bad breakup, often enough, not being in touch for the rest of our lives may be the best of all outcomes. Okay, but that doesn't mean there wasn't love there, and that once we're connected to somebody by love, there's always something there. There's no such thing as a casual love relationship. There's nothing casual about it. Love is tapping something eternal. It's a gift of God, and therefore our connectivity. I know lots of people who've walked away from committed relationships where circumstances changed, and yet they still hold a kind of love and connectivity to them. I remember once, many years ago, as a novice, doing my hospital experiment with people who were suffering from HIV, some of them dying of full-blown AIDS syndrome. And I remember once going into this room every day, this poor guy who was a serious drug addict for much of his life. And this woman was there. I assumed it was his wife. And she would be there every day, and I'd go in and chat with them and pray with them. And then it dawned on me toward the end, because I said to her at one point, this must be really hard watching him like this. And she looked me right in the eye and said, not nearly as hard as watching him in his addiction when I was married to him. Then it dawned on me, she's the ex-wife. She's somebody who had to, because of circumstances, say things should have been better by now. It should have been by now, and had to walk away for the sake of herself and who knows, her family or for children, I don't know. She had to set up serious boundaries, but there was still love there. And in his end, in his last days, she decided to let her love express itself by accompanying him into the final chapter of his earthly life. Maybe also giving him a hope and sense that that love being still there for her and him, her love for him was a sign of that eternal love that would take him into an eternal life, something that was always going to be committed by God, a faithful God. So there's never a been by now moment when it comes to God's love. And in fact, I would say that if we've really loved each other in some way, any way, lots and lots of different kind of relationships in which we can love each other, I would suggest that it's never been by now completely, that there's always some possibility of what it can be, even if it's not what we had hoped it would be. So friends, I think there's a way in which today's gospel, where Jesus asks us to take courage, we need to take courage about the relationships that we have and know that that gift of courage comes out of the primary virtue of love. And if we can grasp onto that, we can have courage in relationships, even as they change, even as they fail in expectations of what we thought they could be, but to know that there's always a possibility that God's grace working on our effort with each other can always allow us to come to know a deeper journey with one another, a commitment that can last, and a love that can be practiced in many ways, and that's never been by now. It's always possible to be something more, something that it's called to be in the moment, and something that allows you and me to come and know that there's a courage, and our fear about love needs to be dissipated and replaced by a courage that always opens us up to the possibility that love will sustain us in ways maybe we didn't expect, but in ways that are really quite remarkable signs of God's committed, faithful love to you and me that sustains us in this life and into the next. By now, you and I should trust that it will always be something more, the love of God, and a practice of love that we can have with each other every day. Amen.